Hello again. What we have here is a remote control, and the problem was that some of the buttons were not functional, and as you can see on the IC there was corrosion on the board. Now when we look under the microscope we can see right over here that some of the traces are broken off. Only the pads are fine, but the traces are broken from the pad. So what we have to do here is to reconstruct the traces, and the remote should work again. Now the problem with this one is that the traces are underneath the chip, so we have to reconstruct the traces and use solder mask to hold the wires in place. Now what we've done here, we can start to clean the pads and see. You can see where the trace is actually connected to the pad. The solder is flowing continuously, but where it's interrupted, it's leaving a gap. Now zooming in, you can clearly see the breaks. We clean up the board and we start the trace repair process. We put a little bit of a solder on the trace and then on the pad, and we jumper with the wire, and then we apply the solder mask to hold in place the wire, and then we can easily solder the IC back. Now we use enameled wire, and you have to apply a little bit of a flux and sort of rub the iron against the wire to burn off the isolation to be able to solder the wire correctly. Before applying solder mask, you have to clean the board very well, because if you leave any residue of flux, the solder mask is not gonna have a good connection with the board, and it might not isolate so as good as you want. So after we clean up the board, we messed up here with the solder mask, but you want to put a fairly light coat, not so thick coat, because if you put it very thick, then the solder mask is not gonna cure. So we clean up the mess, and we spread the rest of the solder mask. Now here we clean the chip, and we get rid of the old solder. We apply the new solder on the pins and a little bit of flux to help the solder flow, and we prepare for the soldering of the chip. Now here you can see the pads after the solder mask has cured. It's not really in focus, but now the connection is stable and it's not moving around when we're gonna heat up the IC, I mean the pads to solder the legs. Now we can start by soldering one corner a pin from one corner and then the opposite one after we align. So here we put solder on one pin and we put the chip on. It's fairly good aligned, not so much. We adjust it and here is pretty good, I think. And after we align it, we solder the opposite pad so that it stays in place. Now, as we always tell to our students, always check your pinout. And now this is the moment I realized that we put it backwards. Yeah, the pin 1 on the board is there and the pin 1 on the chip is up. So yeah, mistakes were made, but we solved them in the end. So it was all good and it all worked perfectly. Now we had to change the orientation of the chip, which wasn't that big of a deal. But you always have to check out your pinout before you start to solder, because that's gonna increase your efficiency in the long term. Now, if this helped you in any way, don't forget to leave a like and see you on the next one.